Welcome everybody. It is Wednesday, August 31st, and it's been Tuesday, August 31st. Why was I thinking Wednesday? Tuesday, August 31st. I'm a day ahead of myself. And it is final cut day for the NFL to get down to 53-man rosters for each team. And it has been a day, let me tell you. And of course, my microphone seems all messed up right now and doesn't want to turn for me. There we go. We've had some major moves today, including one, Cam Newton being released by the Patriots. Now, a move that a lot of people did not see coming. A lot of people who are vocal and happy about it happening. I don't know why anybody would be happy about a man losing his job, but there's a lot of haters of Cam Newton out there, and there's a lot of supporters of Cam Newton out there. There's a lot of people who believe that Cam Newton is still a viable starting quarterback, and a lot of people who believe that he shouldn't even be in the NFL and that he's washed up and blah, 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 blah. Either way, that's not what this is about. Cam Newton is no longer a Patriot. Mac Jones is being handed the reins. Brian Hoyer was also cut as well, who will probably end up getting re-signed Wednesday or Thursday. But it looks like Jarrett Stidham right now is going to be the backup quarterback. How long that's a fact, who knows? But I would anticipate Brian Hoyer being back on the roster here very shortly. And him being the man essentially training Mac Jones to run the Patriots offense, because Brian Hoyer, out of everybody that was on the roster, has the most experience in running the Patriots offense. And I see we're getting some orders on the website, which is always fun to see. Break night is tomorrow night. But back to football. So Mac Jones is going to be the Patriots starter for day one. A move that not many people anticipated prior to the preseason starting, where Mac Jones has looked extremely good running the offense. Almost Tom Brady-esque, a young Tom Brady-esque. Calm, cool, can handle it, moving in the pocket, throwing the ball with accuracy, not getting overly stressed out in the pocket, not getting overly ambitious, and not freaking out trying to run the offense. So it only made sense that Mac Jones takes over and move on from Cam Newton. Now, I did not expect Cam Newton, even if he did not get the starting nod. I did not believe Cam Newton would get cut or released, so to speak. I believe they paid him $2 million for this year and signing bonus as well. I expected Cam to at least be on the roster in case Mac Jones faltered or got hurt. They could at least have a solid number one quarterback as a backup because they got him at a lower cost. But they free up that roster spot, and I'm sure they'll put somebody else in that place. Just bizarre to me. Again, I know there's a lot of Mac Jones haters out there. I don't care, or not Mac Jones, sorry, Cam Newton. I don't care. I don't care if there's Cam Newton haters out there. I don't care if there's Cam Newton massive supporters out there. I know there's some of both. Now it's just a matter of, is Cam Newton going to end up elsewhere, or is he going to essentially hang it up? He's still fairly young. I want to say he's in his early 30s. He was a 2010 draft pick, so he's got to be in his early 30s, mid to mid 30s at most. So I mean, he's still got years left to play. I said this before with Cam Newton. I mentioned this last year during his time with the Patriots, that I don't think that Cam is washed up. I believe that he is no longer the dual threat quarterback that he was in his prime, and that he needed to adjust his playing style. And throughout his career, as his skill set diminished on the ground, he didn't perfect his quarterbacking abilities that didn't rely on his legs. This past season, I wouldn't say exposed that, because he was in a tough situation to begin with coming into the Patriots late, no offseason to prepare, half the roster being depleted, No notable names to speak of on the roster for offense. So it was tough all the way around. The only thing that really kept any points going really was Cam Newton's legs, which he didn't really even run that much. I know he had like 7 rushing touchdowns, I think. But it's not like he was, when he was 26, 27 years old, like a gazelle out there and running down the field for 50-plus yard touchdowns. I believe that Cam Newton needs to adjust his game if he's going to continue playing in the NFL at the age that he's at and at the diminished running ability that he's at. It's just not, with the amount of injuries that he's had, it's just not something that he should push if he wants to continue to play in the NFL. So it is now the Mac Jones show. So now we have 3 rookie quarterbacks from the 2021 draft class who've been announced as day 1 starters. That would be Trevor Lawrence with the Jaguars, who the Jaguars this last weekend also traded Gardner Minshew to the Philadelphia Eagles. Another move that was not foreseen ahead of time. I, for one, did not see Gardner Minshew being traded this early. So Gardner Minshew was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles and potentially creating another quarterback controversy with Philadelphia. I'm not sure why Philadelphia pulled the trigger on that. I know Joe Flacco has played uninspired football as of late. He's looked okay at best. But taking on quarterback Gardner Minshew, on the other hand, is a completely different avenue, in my opinion. This is why Philadelphia is going to continue to struggle at the quarterback position, is because they don't seem to want to invest in their quarterback, and they don't want to seem to give their quarterback the feeling that he is being supported. Anytime you have a quarterback and you bring in somebody that is there to take that person's job, it gives that quarterback a sense of, crap. Maybe I'm not as beloved by the front office and coaching staff as they led me to believe. And it's a little bit different when you're a 15-year veteran, such as an Aaron Rodgers or a Tom Brady. It's quite the opposite when you're a 5-year quarterback or less. A Carson Wentz, a Jalen Hurts, Tua. You know, that is a whole different mentality, because even Carson Wentz, yes, he was a draft pick of 2016, but if you look at his body of work, he's had MVP caliber play. The Super Bowl run, he was playing fantastic that whole season and then got hurt 5 weeks left in the season, which then Nick Foles led them through the playoffs into the Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl. So now all of a sudden Carson Wentz goes, hey, congratulations, team, you did it without me after I got us to a winning record and got us in a position, and then Nick Foles took over. So okay, we're not going to keep Nick Foles. Okay, that's fine. That's great. I'm the starting quarterback. Oh, I'm injured again. Okay. Oh, you're going to draft a second round draft pick. You're going to draft a top 5 quarterback prospect in college. Why, when we need help? We just got done playing with a depleted line and banged up receivers and running backs. Why don't you get me more help instead of drafting another quarterback? I get it that I'm hurt, but you know, one thing that would help me not being hurt would be an offensive line. And so they created that themselves. And then now Jalen Hurts takes over after they trade Carson Wentz, embattled quarterback Carson Wentz. And now Jalen Hurts has to deal with a quarterback in Gardner Minshew who's going to come in and not be satisfied with number 2. And so, and I'm not saying that Gardner Minshew is going to come in here and, you know, beat up Jalen Hurts or treat him like crap or not be supportive of him, but all it's going to take is an interview with Gardner Minshew with the media where they say, hey, Gardner, what's your goals here in Philadelphia? And he's going to go, well, number 1 goal obviously is I want to win a championship. I want to be part of a winning program. And they're going to say, are you here to compete? And he goes, well, of course I'm always here to compete, because that's who Gardner Minshew is. He said, I'm going to be here to compete. And they're like, oh, so you're saying that you're not satisfied being back up to Jalen Hurts? And he's going to say, I support Jalen Hurts, but I am here to compete to be the number one quarterback. And the media is going to take that sound clip and go, Gardner Minshew says that he's here to take Jalen Hurts' job. And all of a sudden, it creates in the fan base problems. And it creates in Jalen Hurts' head problems. It creates within the team, in the locker room, problems, because this is being spewed constantly now. And it hasn't happened yet. I'm saying this is potentially what could happen. And that's because the team is not giving Jalen Hurts the support and the backing by showing him that he is their starting quarterback. And so this is what my fear is, that they're going to create this by bringing in Gardner Minshew, and it's by no fault of Gardner Minshew. I don't know what took place within the Jaguars organization. I don't know the conversation that Minshew had with Urban Meyer or with the front office or anything. I haven't read that at all. I don't know if Minshew asked to be traded because they were going to announce that Trevor Lawrence was going to be QB1. I don't know. But I know that Minshew going to Philadelphia, by no decision of his own, I'm guessing, and Minshew being in Philadelphia is not going to be, he's not going to come in and say, I'm coming in to screw things up. It's not going to be his fault, but he's going to push. And that's the type of quarterback he is, which is a good thing. But he's going to open up that media presence, and the media is going to take that and run with it. Why? Because it gets clicks, because it gets likes, because it gets shares, it gets retweets, it gets people following reporters. That's what their goal is. As somebody who essentially is a media company, I understand how that works. Now, I stay out of all the extra drama, and I stay out of all the bogus rumors, and I stay out of creating that controversy, because I don't want to be part of that. I want to, when I'm reporting things, I want to report stone cold facts. I want to report what people are talking about as this is what happened. I want to be reporting what is actually going down. I don't want to take a sound bite, a clip off of a guy that's only part of the truth, and say, hey, this guy said X, Y, and Z, cut it down and say, hey, he said this, and this is going to cause problems, and this is going to be bad for the team, and they need to get rid of him, or they need to move on from the other guy and put this guy into place. I don't want to do that crap. I just want to take the entirety of it and say, hey, Gardner Minshew got traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. In his press conference, he said, I'm here to win a championship. I am here to support this team. I am here to help Jalen Hurts as best I can. And if I end up outplaying him at some point and I get the starting nod, or if Jalen Hurts struggles at some point and they give me an opportunity, I'm going to take my chance. I'm going to take my opportunity, and I'm going to run with it. Instead of the media saying, oh, he's competing for the starting quarterback role, and he's going to do everything he can to put Jalen Hurts down. And that's what I'm afraid the media is going to do, and create another controversy in Philadelphia in less than 2 seasons. So, whether that's going to happen or not, we'll know in the next few weeks. Exactly. David Miller just hit it on the head. That's why Seattle has trash backup quarterbacks, because they don't want to create a quarterback controversy. They believe that Russell Wilson is QB1. They don't need anybody else coming in here and saying, oh, I'm going to supplant Russell Wilson as the starting quarterback. Nope. They put trash quarterbacks behind Russell Wilson exactly for that reason. That's one of the reasons why Pete Carroll didn't bring in Colin Kaepernick. He didn't want to divide a locker room. He didn't want to put a guy on the field or in the locker room that could potentially interfere with the serenity that they had in the locker room. You don't want to do that. You don't want to bring in a quarterback that can divide your locker room in support. You want your locker room supporting your starting quarterback. The moment you have another quarterback in the locker room that the team feels is that even part of the team feels is a better leader and a better option, that coach has then lost lost the locker room. That's the number one way for a coach to lose a locker room. Because if you don't believe in your starting quarterback, why would you play hard for him? I get it. It's your paycheck. It's your job. But if you believe that somebody else has a better opportunity or is a better fit, you're going to subconsciously do things that would support him over the other guy. And if you create that division, again, that's a coach losing a locker room. That's one of the many ways a coach can lose a locker room. So, back to what got all this started. We have 3 quarterbacks from the 21 draft class that have been announced as the starting quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, Zach Wilson in New York with the Jets, and now Mac Jones as a Patriots starting quarterback. We're still waiting on Justin Fields and Trey Lance to get the starting nods, which may not happen for several weeks, and there's nothing wrong with that. Andy Dalton was brought into Chicago to be the starting quarterback. So be it. Let him be the starting quarterback. You didn't pay him an absorbent amount of money. You don't need to push Justin Fields into the position. You don't have a wide receiver skill set that's going, oh my God, we just are missing this quarterback and we're going to be a contender. We're going to be a Super Bowl contender. You have a very good defense and you have a mediocre offense with a less than mediocre head coach. Quite frankly, that's what Chicago is right now. Because if Matt Nagy was as good of a head coach as he was expected to be, they wouldn't have struggled with Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky wasn't as bad as people think. I personally am starting to put Matt Nagy in the Adam Gase realm of head coaching. And I personally think that Mitch Trubisky is a serviceable starting quarterback. Not a bridge quarterback, not a stopgap, but I actually think that Mitch Trubisky could be a starting quarterback on at least 10 different NFL rosters and hold the job. Do I think that he's Patrick Mahomes? No. Do I believe he's Aaron Rodgers? No. Do I believe he's even Ben Roethlisberger? No. No. But I believe he's better than 10 different starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And now Andy Dalton's a starting quarterback in Chicago, and I used this reference with Dave the other day, with David Miller on Twitter. He brought up a point about Cam Newton and Andy Dalton because they're from the same draft class, and how wins shouldn't be attributed just to a quarterback. Wins shouldn't define a quarterback's legacy because winning is a team effort. Now, the what I used when talking to Dave was something that had gotten brought up years ago with Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton was a very good quarterback when he was with the Bengals for years. He led the Bengals to multiple division championships and multiple playoff appearances. The knock on Andy Dalton during that time was Andy Dalton couldn't win a primetime game to save his life. And Andy Dalton went 0 in the playoffs. Never won a playoff game. He can't handle the bright lights. So Andy Dalton would spend all season long on day games, throwing lights out touchdowns, lots of yards, turnovers here and there, but he was a good daytime quarterback. And then he fell apart in primetime and playoffs. And so it kind of got established what was called the Dalton line. And the Dalton line was the average for a quarterback. He was the epitome of average. And so you had the Dalton line, and then you had everybody above the Dalton line and below the Dalton line. And so, like, for example, in the AFC North, because we're very familiar with Andy Dalton, Ben Roethlisberger was above the Dalton line. Joe Flacco was barely above the Dalton line. Every quarterback that Cleveland had was below the Dalton line. Well, then in comes Lamar Jackson. And even after Andy Dalton was no longer a Bengal, Lamar Jackson was above the Dalton line. Mason Rudolph, at times, has been called the next Dalton line. Now, whether you believe that or not, I don't know. We haven't seen enough of Mason Rudolph yet. But Andy Dalton is just that. He is the epitome of the average quarterback. So he's serviceable, absolutely. Look what he did for Dallas when Dak went down until he got hurt. He handled it. Now, he didn't go out and win a bunch of games for Dallas, but he also didn't lose a bunch of games for Dallas. He was mediocre. He was average. So, Dallas was built for a quarterback that could sling it, for a quarterback that was mobile, and Andy Dalton wasn't mobile. Dak Prescott, I wouldn't say he's Lamar Jackson mobile, but he can move. And so the offense wasn't built for Andy Dalton. Now, going to Chicago, Andy Dalton has a chance to be a pocket passer, but that offense, that coaching staff is abysmal. And I don't think Andy Dalton is going to succeed there. So, the whole point was the Dalton line, above and below the Dalton line. That's your average quarterbacks. So, again, I think that Mitch Trubisky is above the Dalton line because in big games, Mitch Trubisky has shown that he can handle it. He did that plenty of times in Chicago. He had multiple big games in Chicago. But then multiple times where he absolutely fell apart. And I put a lot of that on the coaching staff because he either A, wasn't prepared for the certain defenses he was facing, or B, it just seemed uninspired football, and it was like he was given a script, and he had to follow it to the T, and he had to throw it to a certain receiver on certain plays, or else he would get his hand slapped. That's what it seemed like to me when he was playing. Because there was times where he would go out and he'd gunsling it, and he would light it up, and he looked like he was energetic, and he looked like he was having fun. And he'd be throwing the ball all around, and he'd throw for 300-plus yards and 3 touchdowns. But then the next game, he'd come out, and he had lesser accuracy, no zip to the ball, hung his head, didn't appear to want to even try to win, and uninspired. And like I said, it was almost like he'd go from one quarterback to another quarterback within a matter of a week. And it was completely bipolar. Now, again, I don't know if Matt Nagy gave him a playbook and said, you will follow this to a T. You will do exactly as you're told. And then the next game they go, whatever. We're not supposed to win this game anyways. Mitch, just, go out and throw the ball around. Go play some backyard football. I don't know. Again, I wasn't in the locker room. But two completely different quarterbacks, and I think Mitch Trubisky could succeed. I mean, he came into Chicago in preseason and absolutely laid a beating on them in preseason. So maybe he's a better quarterback than Chicago gave him credit for. Maybe he's a better quarterback than a lot of people gave him credit for just because of, we'll call it the Nagy effect now. Maybe. And maybe Andy Dalton has this mediocrity happen, and maybe Justin Fields comes in and has mediocrity happen. Although I think Justin Fields' improv ability on the field might play better into his skill set and might give him the ability to take what's being told of him to do and expand upon it more and be more successful. And Matt Nagy better recognize if that's the case and that's happening to let it continue to happen. Because Justin Fields can either make or break Matt Nagy's head coaching career. And if he tries to do the same thing he did to Mitch Trubisky, I think Matt Nagy's going to be out the door. If Justin Fields is successful, Matt Nagy might get re-upped on his contract. Hell, if Andy Dalton is successful, Matt Nagy might get re-upped on his contract. If Andy Dalton plays all 17 games in 2021 and leads the Bears to the playoffs, God help us, but Matt Nagy will end up with a contract extension. Moving over to San Francisco, away from Chicago, is the Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance situation that Kyle Shanahan has given no clarity to at all. And if you watched the last preseason game, the 49ers came out and ran a multiple quarterback rotation with Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance, and Jimmy Garoppolo even using his legs and Trey Lance using his legs, and they looked pretty solid. And of course, the media took that and said, Kyle Shanahan is going to deploy a quarterback rotation, and he's going to use multiple quarterbacks and change the formations and the sets on teams. No, he's not. He's not at all. He put in plays. This is frickin' preseason. He didn't give two craps if they won that game. He went in with certain sets to give Trey Lance the ability to run with the guys that Jimmy Garoppolo was running with, because he wanted to see how Trey Lance handled it with the same guys that Jimmy was. If Jimmy could throw a pass and be successful, could Trey Lance do the same thing? That's essentially what he was doing. He needed Jimmy to get some reps in because he wanted to make sure Jimmy was healthy and that Jimmy was moving around properly. And then he'd give Trey Lance a shot. And yeah, a lot of it was handing the ball off. But that's the thing. If you looked at it, Trey Lance had multiple times during the preseason where he and his running back were not on the same page. Now, whether this was Trey Lance calling out the wrong play or the play getting misconstrued by the coach or what, I don't know. But multiple times this preseason, Trey Lance has taken a snap and turned the direction that the running back was not. And he got hit a couple of times for it. Again, I don't know if that was the running back or if that was on Trey or if that was on whoever brought the play in. Who knows? But if that's something that is a concern, yeah, give Trey Lance 20 snaps where he's just handing the ball off. See how he deals with it. See how he adjusts with his offensive line. When he takes the hit, how does he get back up? Does he talk to the guys? Does he find out how? That's how you gauge a leader. When there's a screw-up, when there was an error, when there's miscommunication, are you riding your guys for it? Or are you talking to find out what the hell happened so you can fix it? And that's what he was doing. Jimmy was running plays. Jimmy's a 5, 6, 7-year veteran, whatever it is now. And so he knows what he's getting with Jimmy Garoppolo. If Kyle Shanahan needed to run Jimmy Garoppolo for any other reason than finding out if he's healthy, then Kyle Shanahan is obviously not the coach we thought he was. He wasn't running Jimmy Garoppolo in preseason to find out if Jimmy Garoppolo can run the offense. He damn well knows Jimmy Garoppolo can run his offense. Jimmy Garoppolo took him to the Super Bowl. It's not a matter of can Jimmy run it. It's a matter of is Jimmy healthy enough and mobile enough to run it. Now, Glasshouse Jimmy, yes, can get hurt, as he's proven multiple times over the last few years that if he takes a bad shot, much like Le'Veon Bell, he gets hurt. He steps awkwardly, and he gets leg hit the wrong way. He gets his back hurt. He tweaks his neck, all this kind of stuff, because certain guys work on getting hit in awkward ways, and so they can combat that by lifting their foot at a certain time, knowing when something's coming, moving their arm down, dropping their shoulder, dipping their head a little bit or raising their head up so they don't get hit in the neck. There's a lot of different things that a quarterback can do and a lot of things that football players don't adjust on. Aaron Rodgers is one of the smarter quarterbacks in the NFL. I think we can all agree. And Aaron Rodgers does that kind of thing on a regular basis. He watches how he gets hit on film. I've listened to him break this down. Because he'll watch how his legs get hit so that he can prepare the next time a guy dives a certain way to keep him from blowing out an ACL, from tearing a meniscus, to getting an ankle injury. The way he throws the ball, how he plants, he wants to be in a certain position when a guy comes so that he can absorb some of the blow in a different direction or not have his body positioned a certain way to avoid at all cost an injury as best he can. So, again, Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't had enough field time comparatively to Aaron Rodgers, obviously. And if Jimmy Garoppolo can accomplish said things of avoiding injury, then yeah, he can run Kyle Shanahan's offense. He can run it well enough to make a playoff run. Now, San Francisco gave up the farm for Trey Lance to trade up to draft Trey Lance. Is it because they don't believe in Jimmy Garoppolo? No. It's because they want to make Jimmy expendable, because his contract soon is going to be friendly enough that they can trade him. And then they'll have Trey Lance on a lower cost contract. And the best way to trade Jimmy is to get him field time. Because if they went right now and tried to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, or in the last month, let's say even, and tried to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, they're going to get offers of 4th rounders, 5th rounders, maybe 3rd rounders. Nothing great. Okay? If they trot Jimmy out there for week 2, or, well, up through week 5, weeks 1 through 5, and Jimmy goes 4-1, 3-2, averaging 290 yards a game and 2 touchdowns, all of a sudden he becomes a valuable asset. And then all of a sudden, quarterback-needy teams, such as potentially Carolina with Sam Darnold, if the Sam Darnold situation doesn't pan out, or if he gets hurt. Denver, if Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock don't pan out or they get hurt. Houston, if Deshaun Watson is not coming back and they struggle with the quarterback. Miami, if Tua goes down, or if Tua struggles mightily. All of a sudden, there's trade potential for Jimmy. And they could get back the 1st rounder that they gave up for him. So, I think that San Francisco's being smart about it by not just handing the keys to Trey Lance. Now, would I love to see Trey Lance win Rookie of the Year? Absolutely. I love Trey Lance. I think the kid's a stud, and I think he's the future of the NFL. But he doesn't need to be pushed into it. Patrick Mahomes is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and he didn't play until week 17 of his rookie season, and that was a 1-game start in the final week because they sat their starters. They didn't need to play Patrick Mahomes. They had Alex Smith. You don't need to play Trey Lance. You have Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, once Trey Lance has the offense down pat and has the rapport with his wide receivers, Trey Lance is going to blow Jimmy Garoppolo's production out of the water. Because if you watched the 49ers preseason games, Trey Lance had the most incompletions out of any rookie quarterback. 1st rounder, sorry. Why? Because he had 7 drops. His wide receivers dropped the ball 7 times in 2.5 games. He played a half per game, let's say. 7 drops in partial games. That's not good. And everybody was like, well, maybe he doesn't throw a catchable ball. Bullshit. North Dakota State receivers caught those balls no problem. In fact, a tidbit of information here, because I'm a North Dakota State stat guy. Through 5 weeks at North Dakota State in 2019, Trey Lance had more total touchdowns than incomplete passes. In 2019, his redshirt freshman year, his only full season as a starter at North Dakota State, he had more touchdowns between passing and rushing than incomplete passes through 5 weeks of the season. I shit you not. So no, it is not that Trey Lance does not throw a catchable ball, because I assure you, receivers who are not in the NFL caught those balls just fine. FCS receivers caught those balls just fine. So no, the narrative that he does not throw a catchable ball is BS. So, when he's playing with the Deebo Samuels and the Brandon Ayuks and the George Kittles of the 49ers, I expect those balls to be caught, because those guys are people who reel those passes in. Trey Lance throws an accurate pass. very accurate pass. He throws them on a rope. When he's going on a straight beeline pass, holy crap. Some of the stuff that he threaded the needle on was impressive. Some of the dimes he dropped from deep were impressive because he can throw the ball. He's got a cannon, and he's got mobility. I said this when he was coming out of college. He was a combination of not quite Lamar Jackson and not quite Aaron Rodgers. I'm talking mobility and arm. But he's got potential to get closer to both of them than any other quarterback in the NFL. So there's our 5 quarterbacks coming out of this year's draft class in the first round. And Trey Lance and Justin Fields are going to patiently wait because they don't need to start day 1. In fact, I kind of hope they don't. I hope they don't even start by week 4. They don't need to. Now, there was a lot of other cuts in the NFL this week, today. You know, a lot of, we'll call them bubble fringe players. I can't say that I saw anything massive. You know, we saw things like Travis Etienne go down. He's out for the season. J.K. Dobbins went down. He's out for the season, and that was a bummer. Now, again, Steelers fan, J.K. Dobbins is a Raven. But, man, that kid was special. And from a Steelers fan, I hope he recovers fast, and I hope to see him on the field next year because I liked playing against the guy. He was a running back that I enjoyed watching play. I have the utmost respect for Ravens players. I tend to not like some of the Browns players, and I tend to not like some of the Bengals players. Now, a lot of the Bengals players that I really don't like are no longer there, such as a Vontaze Burfict and a Pac-Man Jones, and T.J. Houshmandzadeh and Chad Johnson, and I digress. Browns are now becoming that for me. But, I mean, hey, they had their first winning season last year and their first playoff appearance and victory in 20 years. So, I'm not opposed to them being good. In fact, I'm an AFC North guy, not just a Steelers fan. I love the AFC North. I love brutality in football. I love tough, hard-nosed, smash-mouth, in-your-grill, meet me at the frickin' line of scrimmage. Let's see who can push the hardest. Let's get that 1 inch. That's the type of football I like. Cold weather. Beat the snot out of each other. That's the type of football I like. That's why I'm a Steelers fan. And the Ravens are just like the Steelers. They're built just like the Steelers. They're a franchise just like the Steelers, and I love that. I love the competition between the two of us. And I like that Cleveland is taking that on, and I like that Cleveland is getting into this more, and I like that Cincinnati, well, they got a quarterback that we can hit and no offensive line to block for him. I'm just giving you Cincy fans crap. I'm just giving you crap. I think Joe Burrow is fantastic. I really do. I hate the fact that you got a really good quarterback, but I really hate the fact that you're not protecting him. Yes, you made improvements to your offensive line from last year. That wasn't hard to do. I probably could have gone and played offensive line for them and had a better PFF ranking than some of those guys. I'm just kidding. I couldn't have. I'm not serious. But those guys were not good last year. Now, that could have been on the O-line coach. I don't know. Because I spent too much time watching Joe Burrow get his ass handed to him over and over again, and then Ryan Finley get his ass handed to him over and over again, and then whoever their third-string quarterback was. It was brutal. This was like watching Mortal Kombat brutalities over and over again. And now it's been happening in the preseason for him, too. And then the guy that a bunch of analysts said, don't take this guy 5th overall, take Penny Sewell, and they went with Jamar Chase out of LSU, and now he's dropping passes. The guy all the draft people told you not to take because you needed to protect your quarterback is dropping passes. Bittersweet? No, I think Jamar Chase is a stud. I think he really is. And I think he'll be fine. I don't think the drops issue is going to last. I really don't. I think he's a good enough player and a hard enough worker that he will fix his issues and he'll be just fine. The next issue is going to be whether or not Joe Burrow has a time to throw. That's going to be the problem. And I said this before, 2.3 seconds. The average amount of time from snap until Joe Burrow was either hit or flushed from the pocket in 2020. 2.3. That number is going to be ingrained in my head for years to come. 2.3 seconds. Seattle fans know all too well Russell Wilson was 2.6 seconds in 2020. And that was a complaint the Seattle fans had. Get Russell protection. Get the run game going. Keep these guys, keep the defenders off him. Give him time to throw the ball. If Russell Wilson had 2.9 seconds or 3.1 seconds, like Aaron Rodgers or like Tom Brady, Russell Wilson would have thrown for 4,500 yards, 5,000 yards, 6,000 yards. He'd have thrown for 10,000 frickin' yards last year. DK Metcalf would have gone off for 2,200 yards as a second-year receiver and had 35 touchdowns. That would have never happened. But Russell Wilson would have had time. And DK and Tyler Lockett would have feasted even more. They were a fantastic duo last year. Both 10 touchdowns, both 1,000-plus yards. But there was no other receiver on the roster that topped 500. Because he had literally, Russell Wilson had to dump off and get rid of the ball quick. Protection. Because Russell Wilson was getting flushed out of the pocket or hit within 2.6 seconds. So again, Joe Burrow was hit faster than that. 2.3 seconds. 2.3. Fastest in the NFL. Protect your quarterback. Zach Wilson, protected. Mac Jones, protected. Tua, protected. Justin Herbert, protected. 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 Got to protect your quarterback. And this is why I said in 2020, before the 2020 NFL draft, when everybody was talking about Joe Burrow going #1 overall to the Bengals, it's the AFC North. Draft Chase Young. Because Cincy did not have the defensive power to hold up with the Steelers and the Ravens and the surging Browns. No. We need to get our franchise quarterback. The 2021 draft class is ass. There is nobody in the 2021 draft class for us to take. There is no Joe Burrow in the 2021 draft class. We can't do that. Au contraire, my friend. There was 5 quarterbacks that went in the first round in 2021. So, I love it when people use that. Next year's draft class is bad. There's no... They'll make whatever they want out of the quarterbacks. You got to realize that by now. All the time there's quarterbacks that are no-namers up until the bowl games. And then all of a sudden they come out of nowhere. Oh, it's a first-round prospect. What? What are you talking about? Nobody's even been talking about the guy all season long. Now, and I'll say this about Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz back in 2016. I should say in 2015 at North Dakota State. I said it during the college football season. Carson Wentz is going to make a hell of an NFL quarterback. He'll get drafted. He could be a first-round draft pick, absolutely. And then the postseason happened, and bowl games happened, and the Senior Bowl happened. And Carson Wentz balled. And then all of a sudden it became, in January, the narrative, Carson Wentz is going to be a first-round quarterback. And then February rolled around. Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, Eagles trade up. Rams, Eagles. Rams number 1, Eagles number 2. Goff, Wentz, 1-2. That's the way we're going. Same thing happens every year. I'm sorry, but Mac Jones was not on anybody's radar in November. Trey Lance wasn't on people's radar until Mel Kiper said his name in January. I have the pictures. Justin Fields wasn't even talked about. Actually, no, Justin Fields was. Zach Wilson was not even talked about until November. It was Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields were the top 2 that people talked about. And somehow Zach Wilson went 2 overall. And then somehow Trey Lance slid into the picture after. And I'm not saying that I changed people's tune at all. I've been beating that drum since 2019. But Mel Kiper all of a sudden mentions Trey Lance. Oh, crap. Everybody needs to start paying attention now. And then all of a sudden Trey Lance climbs up the boards. And he goes 3 overall. Justin Fields slides to 4. And Mac Jones, who, again, came out of nowhere in January, and all of a sudden, national championship game. Mac Jones, balls. Okay, Mac Jones, first-round draft pick. Come on. Come on. Like I said, every year. Happens every stinking year. But Bengals didn't want Chase Young. Bengals fans didn't want Chase Young. Chase Young is a defense-changing player. But they didn't want him. Nope. Need to get Joe Burrow. And again, no offense to Joe Burrow. I think he's tremendous. But they'd rather have Burrow than Chase Young when they could have had Chase Young last year. Still got their quarterbacks annihilated all season long because they did nothing to protect the quarterbacks in 2020. And then rolled out and drafted, I don't know, maybe they'd have finished second, Zach Wilson. Maybe they'd have finished third, Justin Fields or Trey Lance. Hell, maybe they'd have been the worst team in the NFL and they would have gotten Trevor Lawrence. And then you would have had Chase Young on your defense and Trevor Lawrence on your offense. Trevor Lawrence would have been in a better situation with that than he is with the Jaguars under Urban Meyer. So, like I said, a lot of foolery. And Bengals don't want to they don't want to make themselves an AFC North smash mouth football team. They want to be pretty, they want to be glitzy, they want to be glamoury. They want to throw the ball with the best of them, and they want to dazzle the field, and they want highlights. Well, the highlight that I can remember from 2020 was Joe Burrow getting hit and tearing his ACL. That's the highlight I remember. And it's sad. It's sad. I don't like seeing that happen to players. But that's what happens when you set yourself up with that type of supporting cast. And I got into it one day a couple months ago with a guy before the draft over because I posted the GIF or the meme of Joe Burrow. It was stick figures, and it's Joe Burrow throwing a ball, and it says Joe Burrow or Bengals drafting an offensive lineman. And it's got Joe Burrow completing a pass to a nobody receiver. And then the second picture below it is Bengals drafting Jamar Chase, and it has Jamar Chase out running a route, and Joe Burrow getting sacked. And again, it's all stick figures. And I laughed at it and I shared it. And I said, this is all too true. And Bengals fans come at my throat on this one. And they were just like, we don't have a receiver to get any separation. No receiver was able to get any separation. We don't have the talent on our offense. Jamar Chase is going to change our entire offense. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Your receivers didn't get any separation because they only had 2.3 seconds to get separation. And I explained to them how the 2.3 seconds versus 2.9 seconds works. And a half second is enough time for your receiver to make a break on the route and get open and get separation. And Joe Burrow had no time to throw the ball last year. T. Higgins is a good receiver. Tyler Boyd is a good receiver. A.J. Green is a good receiver. And those guys couldn't hit 1,000 yards last year. Tons of incomplete passes, sailed passes, passes out of bounds to just get rid of the ball to avoid a sack, tons of sacks in general, because there was not enough time. But hey, you got Jamar Chase now. Woohoo! Okay, so talking football this whole time, we have a fun topic for tonight. And when I say we, I mean me. I don't have a turd in my pocket. I teased this out today. We're going to talk fantasy football. Now, if any of you guys are not signed up for the Fantasy Football League, get in soon because I need to get the drafts established soon. So I got to finish getting this division set with people. I've had a lot of people message me, but only a few people actually come through with paying their fee for the league, which has me a little nervous that people are just wanting to play in a free league, even though it says right on it, $20 entry fee. Anyway, before we get into this, though, comments. David Miller, I honestly wanted Mitch Trubisky if we were going to trade Russ this offseason. Yeah, not a bad deal. I honestly think Mitch Trubisky probably would have done well in Pete Carroll's offense. Taylor, I wanted Seattle to draft Dalton in 2011. That could have hurt. That could have really hurt. But now looking back, I'm sure you're probably, wiping your forehead going, whew, glad we didn't. Because obviously the next season you drafted Russell Wilson. Shane says, it's hard to believe Dalton and Newton were in the same draft class. Time flies. It does. It really does. Time is sailing right now. It's crazy. It is crazy. We're talking about guys that were drafted 10 years ago. Hell, look at 2015. Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota were drafted 6 years ago. 6 years ago. Russell Wilson was 2011. Geno Smith, 2013, or not 2011. 2012 was Russell Wilson. 2013, Geno Smith. Crazy how fast this goes. Jordan says, Mac Jones season. Mac Jones. Mac frickin' Jones. I bet you're excited, Jordan. Jordan's feeling it. Mac Jones. Yeah. Third quarterback announced as a starter from this rookie class. It's exciting. It really is. All right, let's get over to our main topic for tonight. If I can get this pulled up properly. Boom. Now, I am at risk of giving away my draft strategy here. But I don't care. I love you guys. And this is where I believe players are going to fall by the end of the season. This is my ranking. Top 10 fantasy football players by position. My rankings. Okay? This isn't anybody else. This is my rankings. Okay? So, we're going to start with quarterbacks. Now, again, this is just top 10, and this has nothing to do with how the team is going to perform, and this has nothing to do with whether the quarterback will be successful with their team. This is strictly from a fantasy football points standpoint, okay? This is based off PPR leagues and 6 points per touchdown regardless of the player. All right, everybody understand that? Okay. My number one quarterback for 2021 is Lamar Jackson. Now, I had to adjust this a little bit just within the last 48 hours with the J.K. Dobbins injury. Okay? I expected Dobbins to be a big part of their offense. In 2020, Lamar Jackson finished just 12th in fantasy football points at the quarterback position with 383 points. Now, that seems like a lot, but that's 12th without anyone on the team surpassing 800 receiving yards. I want you to take that into account for a second. Nobody on Baltimore's offense in 2020 amassed more than 800 receiving yards. Nobody. The Ravens went out, signed Sammy Watkins, and then drafted former Minnesota wide receiver Rashad Bateman. Now, with Dobbins on IR for the season, the run game's going to have to flow through Lamar Jackson yet again. Lamar Jackson's going to end up being the leading the leading rusher yet again this year. I expect him to lead the team in carries, yards, and touchdowns, along with seeing more air yards. He should easily see 3,500 pass yards and 30 touchdowns, which is going to be similar to his 2019 MVP season, where he also led all quarterbacks in fantasy scoring. Lamar Jackson, my vote, my prediction for number one overall fantasy quarterback for 2021. My number two quarterback might surprise some of you. Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills. Now, 2020 unfolded quite nicely for Josh Allen as he built on a very solid 2019 season that saw improvement, but a lot of room for upside. Now, when I say 2019 was solid, he still showed some flaws in his game, but he fixed a lot of that in 2020. Allen finished number 2 in fantasy points in 2020 with 477 points behind only Aaron Rodgers. And I see a similar finish for him in 2021. Now, this year, he's had a full season to work with Stefan Diggs and an off season. So the chemistry between the two became clear in 2020. Now it's going to continue to grow into 21. Now that they've had a full season and an off season. Allen also has the ability to make plays with his legs. Now, he's no Lamar Jackson, not saying that at all, but he's been consistent on the ground with 400-plus rush yards every year and at least 8 touchdowns each season in the NFL. Quarterback number 2 for 2021. Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills. Controversial pick here. Some of you guys may or may not agree, but I am high on him this year. Kyler Murray, Arizona Cardinals. Now, I put him here based on the roster additions for Arizona. Kyler ranked 6th in quarterback fantasy points in 2020 with 436 points. Any quarterback that has a chance to rush for 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns is a fantasy giant. But here's the thing. Kyler also has the potential of throwing for 4,000 pass yards and 30 touchdowns. That sounds like a bit crazy because Lamar Jackson doesn't see those numbers. And Lamar Jackson put up a lot of fantasy points in his MVP season. Now, 2020 stats for Kyler Murray. 3,971 pass yards, 26 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 819 rush yards with 11 touchdowns. So he's already 3,900 plus pass yards, 25 plus pass touchdowns, 800 plus rush touchdowns, and 10 plus rushing touchdowns. 800 plus rush yards, and 10 plus rush touchdowns. So again, 4,000 pass yards, 30 pass touchdowns, along with 1,000 rushing yards and double-digit rushing touchdowns is not far off from where he was last year. And if he does that, he's easily number 3. Now, the Cardinals added A.J. Green via free agency, and they drafted Rondale Moore. They also lost Larry Fitzgerald to retirement, which hasn't been fully announced yet, but it's assumed at this point. If Green can have any sort of career resurgence, he will be a dangerous weapon paired opposite of D-Hop, which makes Kyler an even bigger favorite to be in my top 3 for fantasy. Kyler Murray, number 3, Arizona Cardinals. My number 4 should come as no shock to most people. Some people probably think he should be higher. I honestly wanted to put him lower. Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs. Again, not a shock to most people that he's going to be in the top 5. While I don't expect him to be a 40-plus pass touchdown quarterback, I think he'll be in the high 30s, plus a few on the ground. Mahomes should easily see 4,500 pass yards, which is going to give him a chunk of points right there. Plus, in leagues that have bonuses for distance touchdowns, he's always got the extra value based on his supporting cast, a.k.a. Tyreek Hill. Mahomes also limits mistakes, so having sub or less than 10 interceptions plays into his rankings. So why isn't he top 2? Well, to be quite honest, Mahomes only surpassed 40 touchdowns in one season, and that was his 2018 MVP season of 50. I don't expect him to lead the NFL this year. I don't. So, Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs, my quarterback 4. Quarterback number 5, controversial. We'll call it that. I'm not a supporter of this particular quarterback. I'm not a fan. I mean, I love seeing quarterbacks do well, but he's on a team that I don't care for. And he's a guy who I think is embattled. You know, he gets a lot of crap for being on the team that he's on. Dak Prescott, Dallas Cowboys. Take it or leave it. Dak is back. Dak is healthy. Dak's ready to go week 1. After coming back from that gruesome injury that ended his 2020 season during week 5. Why would I rank Dak this high? Couple of reasons. Number 1, his weapons. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Zeke, and Tony Pollard. It's hard to find a better supporting cast than this in the NFL. Now, I'm no Cowboys fan, but that's a lineup. Number 2, in 2020 through 5 games, technically 4 3/4 games, Dak was leading the NFL in fantasy points per game at 32.6. And he was on pace for a record 5,939 passing yards on the season, currently held by Peyton Manning with 5,477 yards in 2013. Now, is that sustainable? Maybe. Could the Cowboys slow roll him to start the season? Sure. But the success of this team is based on his arm. And if Dak can do anything near what he did in the first 5 games of last season, he might even be higher than 5. He might be 1 overall. My number 5 quarterback, Dak Prescott, Dallas Cowboys. We're going to stick with controversy here because it's fun. It's really fun. So, my number 6. Sorry, clicked off of it. Ryan Tannehill, Tennessee Titans. Oh, I know what you're thinking. I'm insane, right? Well, why in the world is he ranked this high? He has just 1 season surpassing 30 touchdown passes, and he hasn't seen 4,000 plus passing yards since his time in Miami. He also ranked 18th in pass attempts in 2020. So why, oh why? Well, there's a couple reasons. Number one, his new offensive coordinator from his OC from 2020 is now the head coach in Atlanta, so he has a new OC. Tennessee won't go away from the run-heavy offense, but even a 5% decrease means the ball is in Tannehill's hands even more. Tannehill also ranked number 9 in quarterback fantasy points in 2020, so higher production means a bump in rank. Number 2, Julio Jones. Corey Davis is gone, but anyone that doesn't consider Julio an upgrade is on drugs. Sure, Jonnu Smith is gone too, but I expect the Tennessee running backs to pick up that slack. A lot of that slack. Ryan Tannehill is also my favorite to lead the NFL in touchdown passes in 2021. My quarterback, number 6 in fantasy, Ryan Tannehill, Tennessee Titans. Number 7, Russell Wilson, Seattle Seahawks. Let me start by saying that if you think that quarterback 7 in fantasy football is a slap in the face to Russell Wilson, just stop. This isn't a knock on Russell Wilson at all. This should be a testament to where the other quarterbacks have elevated their play to. Russell Wilson is a dynamic playmaker that's one of the toughest quarterbacks to defend in the NFL. So why is he ranked number 7? Well, to put it quite honestly, his team and his coaching. Russell Wilson has a lower ceiling than the guys above, and even some below, due to where he is. Considering he has one of the most physically dominant young wide receivers in the NFL, that sounds weird, but let's consider a few things. A, DK Metcalf was targeted 129 times in 2020 for 83 receptions, 1,303 yards with 10 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett was targeted 132 times for 100 receptions, 1,054 yards, and 10 touchdowns. No one else on the team had more than 500 receiving yards. The next highest was David Moore with 417 yards. And he is now in Carolina. Where does the increase come from? B, the Seahawks running backs. They're going to limit his production. Why? Chris Carson returns as the running back 1, but he's often hurt or has lingering, limiting injuries. Rashad Penny, same story, and they misuse him. Seattle returns 4 running backs from 2020 that ranked 12th in rushing yards, and none of their 4 running backs have been able to physically handle being a featured back, and none surpassed 40 receptions in 2020 or 700 rushing yards. C, the broken record of the Seattle offensive line complaint. Did they upgrade their O-line? Yes. In 2020, Seattle's O-line ranked 16th in pass protection per PFF, which was the best of Russell Wilson's career. 16th in pass protection, and it was the best of his career, and yet he was the 3rd fastest hit quarterback in the NFL, or flushed out of the pocket. Now, they did bring in some new weapons, or some new additions to the offensive line, but can Gabe Jackson bring that up? The downside is Gabe Jackson over the last 2 seasons has gone down in his PFF rankings. So, again, not a knock on Russell Wilson. This is a knock on where the coaching is working for this and the players that they're bringing in to give him. And again, they don't have anybody outside of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett to catch the passes, and the running backs haven't been able to stay healthy. If they would have gone out and gotten a true bell cow run back, yeah, I'd be all for that. But still, Russell Wilson being the 7th best fantasy quarterback is not a bad thing. Me putting him at 7 is actually probably an improvement over what it could be or what it might be. So Russell Wilson is not in a bad position fantasy-wise. He's number 7. And that number 7 could be 20 points behind number 1. It could be 50 points behind number 1. It could be 100 points behind number 1. Just saying. He's number 7. He's still top 10. He's not going to be number 1. Now, he is ahead of Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. Rodgers is coming off an MVP season, and I have Aaron coming in substantially lower than 2021. Rodgers led all quarterbacks in fantasy points in 2020 with 497 points. Historically speaking for Rodgers, he doesn't have a great track record following up a monster season with another monster season. One thing that does bode well for Rodgers is his ball security. He hasn't thrown more than 10 interceptions in a season since 2010. A limiting factor for Rodgers is the rushing attempts. Yards and touchdowns have slowed down in the past 3 seasons. In 2020, Rodgers only ran 3 touchdowns in, which was the most he's had since he ran in 4 during the 2016 season. Also, a telling sign that he hasn't surpassed 300 rushing yards in that same span. So, Rodgers takes a step back. Down to quarterback 8. Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packers, my fantasy football quarterback 8. Number 9, Tom Brady, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. How do I take the Super Bowl winning Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback and put him down at number 9? Well, Brady drops from 7th in 2020 to 9 in 21. Not from his play, but rather the uptick in play by other quarterbacks. Brady's still going to go put together a solid 2021 season. Brady gets a full season with Antonio Brown and Gronk, but I don't see a dominant season by the Tampa offense, at least not through the air. Tampa's a top-tier team overall, and Brady's not going to need to throw the ball for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns per game in order for them to win. If he does need to, not entirely sure the offense will sustain that level. It's a question mark for sure, but if anybody can do it, it's Brady. Quarterback 9, fantasy points for 2021, Tom Brady, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Rounding out my top 10 is second-year quarterback Justin Herbert, Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Herbert ranked number 8 in quarterback fantasy points in 2020 with 417. And that was despite inept coaching and continuous injuries at wide receiver and running back. He put together a solid rookie campaign that led him to Offensive Rookie of the Year. I'd like to have Herbert ranked higher in 2021, especially if he has his full lineup of weapons at his disposal, but I fear I have him, but the fear I have is him going in the other direction because of adjusting to a new offense in as many seasons as he's been in the NFL. I'm not saying Herbert's going to have a horrible season, but a new offense this soon could prove to be a trial for a young quarterback, and it might take an additional year for him to move up this ladder. 10th in quarterback fantasy points is not a bad place to be. Keep that in mind. For everybody I listed in this top 10 list, top 10 is not a bad place to be. This is not insulting to any of these guys. Finishing in the top 10 is a good thing. Okay? Not everybody can finish number 1. There has to be a 2 through 10. Here you go. Justin Herbert, my quarterback 10 for fantasy football in 2021. Moving over to the running backs. Now, here is where some people are going to get up in arms over this. Now, again, this is not about the team winning. This is not about anything other than fantasy football points. This hasn't anything to do with yards per carry, or this is PPR fantasy points, okay? My number 1 that I have going this year, and I had to adjust this based off of the announcement today. Alvin Kamara, New Orleans Saints. Jameis Winston was named starting quarterback. Honestly, and 100% honesty, him and my number 2 are completely interchangeable as they're similar playing styles with similar skill sets. Kamara gets the nod here just because of Jameis Winston being named the starting quarterback. Kamara led all running backs in fantasy points in 2020 with 374, despite a multiple game stretch of Taysom Hill starting and Kamara being a complete non-factor, not being used. The scary side of Alvin Kamara is if Taysom Hill sees the field during 2021, Kamara automatically becomes expendable during that time. During the 4-game stretch in 2020 with Hill starting, which was weeks 11 through 14, Kamara had just 1 game with more than 2 receptions. Also of note, Kamara wouldn't have finished number 1 in running back fantasy points without his monster 6-touchdown game in week 17 of last season. Let's just consider his monster week 17 game as a makeup for the Taysom Hill stint that killed him. Okay? Running back 1, Alvin Kamara, New Orleans Saints. Number 2, no surprise, Christian McCaffrey, Carolina Panthers. And again, I said this, that they were interchangeable as a 1-2. There's no problem. If you think Christian McCaffrey is the 1, that's fantastic. I could have put him at 1. No problem. It wouldn't bother me one bit. If you even went and said, oh yeah, Ryan, put him as, RB1, that's fine. You could literally put him as 1 and 1A and 1B. McCaffrey was hurt most of 2020, but in the 3 games, he saw 225 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns, 17 receptions for 149 yards, and a touchdown. That's a very solid stat line over 3 games, and had him sitting at number 1 in running back fantasy points per game for last season at 28.7 points per game. Given the upgrade at the quarterback position, Run CMC might be in for a year similar to 2019, where he saw 1,387 rush yards, 15 rushing touchdowns, 116 receptions for 1,005 yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns, which would be good enough to put him right in that talk with Alvin Kamara as number 1 overall. It's going to be a race between the 2. I'm calling that right now. These 2 are going to duke it out. My running back 1A, 1B, 2, whatever you want to call it, Christian McCaffrey, Carolina Panthers. Running back 3, Dalvin Cook, Minnesota Vikings. There is no denying Dalvin Cook is a star in the NFL. Cook played in just 14 games in 2020 and also in 2019, yet managed to be number 2 in running back fantasy with 351 points behind Alvin Kamara. Cook actually averaged the 2nd most running back fantasy points per game at 25.1 behind only Christian McCaffrey. So he was number 2 to the 2 guys ahead of him. Cook doesn't put the receiving stats together like the other 2 backs above him, but he throws down on the ground for sure. In 2019, Dalvin Cook, 1,135 rush yards for 13 touchdowns. And then in 2020, improved upon that with 1,557 rush yards with 16 touchdowns. Only 1 running back has been better than him on the ground over the last 2 seasons. Who's that? That's my number 4 running back. Derrick Henry, Tennessee Titans. If Derrick Henry has outproduced Cook in the previous 2 seasons, why is Henry number 4 and Cook number 3? Well, for starters, Henry was number 3 last year in running back fantasy points with 349, which was 2 points behind Cook. Henry also played in all 16 games while Cook missed 2. Henry also contributes even less to the passing game than Cook does. Henry hasn't surpassed 20 receptions in a season in his entire NFL career. So PPR leagues, Cook has a slight advantage over Henry. I also expect a slight decline in production on the ground in Tennessee. As I mentioned in the quarterback section, for Tannehill, Tennessee has a new offensive coordinator, plus added wide receiver Julio Jones. So I see Derrick Henry coming down just a tick, but not out of the top 5. My number 4 Derrick Henry, Tennessee Titans. Miller, I like where you're going with that, but I had guys ahead of him. My number 5 is Aaron Jones, Green Bay Packers. It is hard to put him out of the top 5. There was a big gap in running back fantasy points from number 3 to number 4 last year. It was 349 points for the number 3 back and 261 for the number 4 back. Jones was that number 4 running back, tied with David Montgomery from Chicago, despite missing 2 games. Jones is similar to Dalvin Cook in production in the passing game, but Jones has a ceiling that could put him much closer to the top 4 running backs from last year. Jones saw 100 fewer carries than Cook and Henry in 2020. If that number increases in 2021, we could see Jones close that gap and even put himself in elite fantasy tier. My number 5, Green Bay Packers running back, Aaron Jones. My number 6 climbs this ladder because of another player on his team. Ezekiel Elliott, Dallas Cowboys. 2020 did not pan out for Zeke the way he or Dallas wanted it to. Zeke saw his lowest yards per carry average and lowest rush yards total in his NFL career. I, for one, believe that had a lot to do with poor quarterback play after Dak went down with his injury. Defenses stacked the box against him and keyed on him, knowing Dallas didn't have a quarterback to beat him through the air. With Dak returning in 21, I expect Zeke to feast more. He should see an uptick in production in the passing game as well as running in general, as Dak can keep defenses honest. I believe, I 100% believe we are past the days of Zeke putting up 1,400 yards, but he can hit 1,100 with 10 touchdowns. That puts him in RB1 territory for fantasy football on most rosters, and that puts him right in that 6th spot for fantasy football. My number 6, Ezekiel Elliott, Dallas Cowboys. Number 7, here you go, David. Antonio Gibson, Washington football team. Gibson was quietly putting together a great rookie season in 2020 prior to his injury and missing most of Week 13's matchup against the Steelers and then missing the following 2 games. Gibson ranked 12th in running back fantasy points in 2020 with 196, and that was only starting 10 games and also missing 2 3/4 games. On 170 carries, Gibson averaged 4.68 yards per carry and racked up 11 touchdowns. Gibson should see the role in the passing game increase as he improves in year 2. He may not put up elite top 5 numbers, but he should factor to be a solid RB1 unless undrafted free agent running back Jarrett Patterson goes nuclear and steals carries from him. That is one concern that I do have, is that Patterson, an undrafted free agent, which tends to be sleepers, a.k.a. James Robinson, and they could have a successful rookie season and take away carries from the guy in front of them. My number 7, Antonio Gibson, Washington football team. My number 8 goes over to the Chicago Bears. Da Bears, David Montgomery. Montgomery could actually see his rankings go as high as even number 5 in fantasy production by the end of 21. In his 2 years in the NFL, he's improved his yards per carry, touchdowns, receptions, yards per reception, and receiving yards from year 1 to year 2. All on a relatively bad Chicago offense that struggled over the last 2 seasons. With Dalton under center, I could see a similar season as 2020, which was 261 fantasy points. But if Fields gets the call at any point, his production should take an uptick both on the ground and in the passing game. My number 8, David Montgomery, Chicago Bears. My number 9 fantasy projection at the running back position, Naji Harris, Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I don't normally put rookies into the top 10 fantasy lists, but the combination of Najee's skills plus the remaining running backs in the league after this, makes me believe he can crack the top 10. Naji enters his rookie season in Pittsburgh as the bell cow back that the Steelers have been wanting since Le'Veon Bell. The only setback could be the questionable offensive line in Pittsburgh. If the line plays down to how they did in 2020, Najee is going to struggle, get burnt out easily. On the flip side, his role in the passing game could keep him elevated into RB1, RB2 realm. This projection could be either 100% off, meaning I'm extremely high, spot on, or he could actually crush this projection by destroying the entire league. There aren't that many players entering the 2021 season with as many question marks for anticipated production as Najee Harris. My number 9 running back, from fantasy perspective for 2021, Najee Harris, Pittsburgh Steelers. And my 10th ranked running back for the 2021 projection fantasy football, Josh Jacobs, Las Vegas Raiders. Jacobs has a chance to surpass this projection in 2021. He was ranked number 8 in running backs in 2020 with 219 points. The Raiders have a bit of concern at O-line this year with a completely reconstructed offensive line that many analysts believe is a downgrade from last year. If the Raiders can get some cohesion within the offense for Carr to thrive, the entire offense could see bigger numbers. I do believe that for Jacobs to hit this mark or higher, he will have to be more involved in the passing game in the red zone. Little tidbit for you guys, Jacobs in his career has yet to score a receiving touchdown. This is his 3rd year. He's going into his 3rd year, and he has not scored a receiving touchdown. Also, Kenyon Drake joined the team in the offseason, and he could steal carries and receptions from Jacobs. So, 10 might be aggressive, but my number 10 for fantasy production, expectations, projections, whatever you want to call it, for 2021, Las Vegas Raiders running back, Josh Jacobs. Moving over to the wide receivers. This is the fun. I love the wide receiver talk. My number 1, because this is going to be controversial as hell. I can already tell you guys are going to eat me alive on this. My number 1, Stefan Diggs, Buffalo Bills. Diggs pulled off a monster first season with Buffalo in 2020. That was without a preseason, with the ability to get to know his quarterback. Diggs finished ranked number 2 at wide receiver in fantasy points, putting up 338 points last season. I expect him to build on last year's numbers with a higher touchdown total, seeing him hit double digits for the first time in his NFL career. He could keep the same amount of yards and put up 5 more touchdowns, and he's going to end up with a massive stat line. My number 1 receiver for 2021 fantasy points, Stefan Diggs, Buffalo Bills. Number 2, Davante Adams, Green Bay Packers. After the year Davante had in 2020, how does he drop to number 2? Well, it happens. Being number 2 in fantasy points at a position is not, I repeat, not a knock on the player at all. I still expect Davante Adams to rack up 1,200 plus yards and double-digit touchdowns, but I cannot endorse a repeat of 18 touchdowns in just 14 games like he did in 2020. If he does, awesome. Hell yeah, fantastic. But I do not see him putting up the same stat line touchdown-wise this coming year. It's aggressive. It's too aggressive. My number 2 wide receiver, Davante Adams, Green Bay Packers. Number 3, from the Atlanta Falcons, Calvin Ridley. In 2020, Ridley ranked 5th in fantasy points at the wide receiver position with 293. While playing alongside Julio Jones for half the season. When I say half the season, I'll get into that here in a second. The scary difference is what Ridley did without Julio on the field versus what he did with him. Julio missed 7 games last year. Without Julio, over 8 games that he's played without him over the last 2 seasons, Ridley has averaged 7.25 receptions on 11.1 targets per game for 107 receiving yards and 0.4 touchdown average. With Julio on the field, Ridley has only topped 100 receiving yards twice and only achieved 6 or more receptions 4 times. And that's in 25 games of playing alongside Julio. 2 100-yard games and 6 receptions or more 4 times in 25 games. So let's take the average of his 8 games without Julio and let's extrapolate that to 17-game season. This is going to be fun. You guys are going to love this. It's not realistic. I don't expect him to hit these numbers. 17 games, 123 receptions, which I could see happening, and 1,819 yards. 1,800 yards. It's actually not impossible. Now, the touchdowns being the only concern, but I will say, that he put up 9 touchdowns last year in 2020, between missing Julio for 7 games and playing with him for 9. So, a full 17-game slate where he is the true number 1 receiver, if he can put up 1,800 yards, he's hitting double-digit touchdowns if he put up 9 last year. My number 3 receiver for 2021 fantasy, Calvin Ridley, Atlanta Falcons. My number 4 receiver for 2021 fantasy, Tyreek Hill, Kansas City Chiefs. Reek has become one of the more fun players to watch with the ball in his hands in the entire NFL. Every single time he touches the ball, there's a chance he can take it to the house. He torches defenses on deep routes and he evades tacklers on short routes. Hill's become one of the top big play wide receivers in the NFL, bar none. In 2020, Hill ranked 3rd in fantasy points at the wide receiver position with 337 points. While I see another solid season from Hill, I don't think we will see another 17 total touchdown season like we did in 2020. I think we see him reach the 100 receptions list for the first time in his career on a slightly lower yards per reception. My number 4 receiver in fantasy for 2021, Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver, Tyreek Hill. My number 5 receiver comes to us from the Minnesota Vikings, Justin Jefferson. Jefferson burst into the NFL in 2020 with a tremendous rookie season for a wide receiver, putting up 88 receptions for 1,400 yards and 7 touchdowns. I believe Justin Jefferson, a.k.a. JJ, gets north of 100 receptions in 2021. He might not see 1,400 yards again, but an increase in touchdowns and receptions has him ranking number 5 on my list for fantasy point projection. My number 5 receiver, Minnesota Vikings, Justin Jefferson. My number 6 for 2021, Arizona Cardinals' own DeAndre Hopkins. Nuke came in 4th in 2020 for wide receiver fantasy points with 297. His touchdown production has steadily declined since he peaked in 2017 with 13. With the addition of A.J. Green and Rondale Moore, I can see his volume of targets from 2020, which was 160, to decrease. But his efficiency will go up, plus his touchdown improvement. He might not be a 110 reception plus 1,300 yard guy going forward, but it's entirely possible he sees double-digit touchdowns each year for the next couple of years. He's very, very capable still as he's getting older of being 100 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 10 touchdowns in every season. Good enough for 6th on the list. My number 6, for 2021 fantasy football projections for wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, Arizona Cardinals. My number 7 stays in the same division. Teaser. DK Metcalf, Seattle Seahawks. Dominant. Dominant. That's the best way I can describe DK Metcalf. He's 6'4" and jacked. He's fast, strong, explosive, and he's hungry. DK could easily turn into the best wide receiver in the NFL over the next few seasons if he doesn't do it in 2021. A new offensive coordinator in Seattle has me a little worried, but I believe the Russell Wilson to DK connection will continue to thrive. DK ranked 7th in wide receiver fantasy production in 2020 at 281 fantasy points. As long as Wilson isn't one of the most hit quarterbacks in the NFL this year, DK should see a large volume of targets again in 2021. My number 7 receiver for fantasy football projections, DK Metcalf, Seattle Seahawks. Number 8, Keenan Allen, Los Angeles Chargers. Allen finished 2020 as the 13th overall wide receiver in fantasy production with 246 points, and that was despite missing 3 games and lingering injuries. Allen sees a large volume of targets, which was 147 targets in 2020, and he hit the 100 receptions in 2020 yet again. On the downside, he failed to reach 1,000 yards for the first time since 2016 when he played in just 1 game. He did, however, have 8 touchdowns, which was a promising sight after 3 straight seasons of 6 touchdowns each season. With Justin Herbert under center, a healthy Keenan Allen will see a lot of looks, especially in the red zone. And again, I got to say this. All of this is based on health. These guys staying healthy. Keenan Allen has had some injury problems, lingering, missing parts of games, not being able to stay on the field. I get it. This is based on him playing 17 complete games. My number 8, Keenan Allen, Los Angeles Chargers. Number 9, moving over to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm just kidding. CeeDee Lamb, not Amari Cooper. CeeDee Lamb. Making the biggest leap on my list is CeeDee Lamb. This has a lot to do, again, with the return of Dak Prescott. Last year was a very telling story for how much Dak means to this Dallas offense. Lamb still managed to produce 74 receptions, 935 yards, and 5 touchdowns while catching passes from Dak Prescott in 5 games, Andy Dalton in 9 games, Ben DiNucci in 1 game, and Garrett Gilbert in 1 game. As a rookie, those stats came in. As a rookie. Dak comes back, CeeDee's putting up a K. Easily. He's going 90 receptions minimum, and he's putting up a grand, and he's probably going to almost double his touchdown production. My number 9 wide receiver for 2021 fantasy football, CeeDee Lamb, Dallas Cowboys. And my number 10, rounding out my top 10 fantasy wide receiver projections for 2021, A.J. Brown, Tennessee Titans. Brown finished 2020 in 10th place last year with 260 fantasy points, and he's in line for a similar situation. The Titans added Julio Jones to the team after they let Corey Davis walk in free agency. Julio is definitely an upgrade, and AJ hasn't proven he can produce when he's the only name on the field. Julio's going to take targets, yes, absolutely. He's going to take targets from Brown, but he also takes defenders with him. AJ had better stats when Corey Davis was on the field, so playing opposite Julio should be lucrative for AJ Brown. AJ Brown should see a little bit of an uptick as long as the offense does continue to throw the ball and it looks like they're going to continue to run the ball heavy, but put the ball a little bit more in Ryan Tannehill's hands. My number 10 for fantasy projections for wide receivers for 2021, A.J. Brown, Tennessee Titans. And the last grouping we're going to cover tonight is tight ends. My top 10 tight ends for fantasy football projections for 2021. If you have anybody other than Travis Kelce out of Kansas City on your list, you are doing it wrong. With Mahomes at quarterback, Kelce is the number 1 tight end in fantasy football. He was number 1 in 2020 with 317 points and should again be in 2021. His only down season in the last 3 years was 2019, where he missed 100 receptions by just 3 and saw only 6 total touchdowns. Travis Kelce, number 1 tight end fantasy projection-wise for 2021. Travis Kelce, Kansas City Chiefs. Number 2, George Kittle, San Fran. While Kittle hasn't put up the touchdown numbers that Kelce has over the past 3 years, Kittle's managed 80-plus receptions and 1,000-plus yards in both 2018 and 2019. He fell severely short last season in 2020 as he only played in 8 games due to an injury. By the way, his stats have come at the hands of the passers named Jimmy Garoppolo, Nick Mullins, and C.J. Beathard. If Kittle is healthy for the entire 21 season, he should be the second best scoring touchdown in all of fantasy football. My number 2, George Kittle, San Francisco 49ers. My number 3 tight end in football for 2021 fantasy football, Darren Waller, Las Vegas Raiders. Waller's done a tremendous job of reviving his career. Over the last 2 seasons, he's eclipsed 1,000 yards both seasons on 90 and 107 receptions, respectively. His 9 touchdowns in 2020 were second to only Travis Kelce. There is a chance that Waller even surpasses George Kittle as the tight end too, as he and Kittle should be fighting for that spot week in and week out. My number 3 tight end for fantasy projections in 2021, Darren Waller, Las Vegas Raiders. My number 4, Kyle Pitts, Atlanta Falcons. I hate putting a rookie in the top 10, let alone top 5 for fantasy projections. Hate. But the gap between the number 3 tight end and the rest of the veterans in the NFL is just too big to ignore the rookie tight end. Pitts was drafted 4th overall for a reason. He's dynamic. He could play at wide receiver in a lot of formations and handle it easily. If that happens, he could easily see a stat line of 60, 908, which puts him right in this top 4 grouping. There's no reason why he can't, and that's what's scary. My number 4 tight end going into 2021 for fantasy football projections, Kyle Pitts, Atlanta Falcons. My number 5, Rob Gronkowski, Tampa Bay. Gronk is slowing down. Sure, it's no secret. He's also on a team loaded with pass catchers, so it's not easy to eat. Gronk finished 8th in tight end fantasy points in 2020 with 144. That's easy to duplicate and even improve upon. Adding an additional 40 to 50 fantasy points wouldn't quite be where he was back in the mid-2000 teens, but it would be good enough for a top 5 in the NFL. Gronk, with a preseason and practice coming back in, he could be a top 5 tight end still. let's put him in that projection. My number 5, Gronk, Tampa Bay. My number 6, Logan Thomas, Washington football team. This is another position with a giant drop-off outside of the top players. Giant. Guys, I'm not kidding. There's over a 100-point differential in the top tight ends from last year and the next 4 through 7. Logan Thomas is one of about 5 tight ends in the NFL that you could swap for and not notice the fantasy point difference week to week. He's in that range of about 500 to 700 yards from about 50 to 75 receptions and 4 to 7 touchdowns. Thomas is a complete boomer bust as it gets due to the erratic quarterback play that he has to deal with and will continue to deal with in Washington. Boom or bust. Get used to that with other tight ends outside of the top 5 guys. Top 4 guys. My number 6, interchangeable, Logan Thomas, Washington football team. My number 7, Big Bob Tonyan, Green Bay. Similar to Logan Thomas, Tonyan's boom or bust. The upside of Tonyan is that his quarterback's Aaron Rodgers. The downside to Tonyan is that his quarterback is Aaron Rodgers, who loves to throw to his wide receivers named Davante Adams. Davante gets a lion's share of the workload. Tonyan gets scraps. Boom or bust. It was that way all last season as well. He'd go off for 20 points in one game, have 2 points the next game. You can't argue that because the stats are there. Logan Thomas finished above Robert Tonyan last year. So, Tonyan, another guy just like Logan Thomas, completely interchangeable. My number 7, Robert Tonyan, Green Bay Packers. My number 8 goes over to the city of Detroit and T.J. Hawkinson. Sticking with the theme of the interchangeable rankings of tight ends comes Hawk. The upside I see for Hawk is that he has a new quarterback in a new offense with a new head coach and literally no wide receivers of name to speak of. Hawk could be Jared Goff's safety blanket. I'm going to read you this list of wide receivers on the Detroit Lions. This is literally their entire wide receiver lineup. Tyrell Williams, Khalif Raymond, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Quintez Cephas, Trinity Benson, and Tom Kennedy. This screams, throw it to the tight end. Literally. There is not a single wide receiver on their roster of note. Not one. So, he might be the ultimate boom or bust because he could get doubled and never see a catch. He could destroy linebackers and tear up the league. T.J. Hawkinson, my number 8, Detroit Lions. My number 9 comes out of Miami, Mike Josecki. Josecki put together an impressive 2020 season with 53 receptions, 703 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? That sounds about like the last 5 tight ends we've talked about. With Tua taking command of the offense and looking ready for the job, Josecki could easily improve on those numbers. While I believe his ceiling is lower within the Miami offense, he could easily be a 6 to 10 rank tight end in fantasy production this year. Again, interchangeable, literally falls in that range that I've said for the last 4 tight ends. 53 receptions, 700 yards, 6 touchdowns. It's like I got it on repeat. Number 9, Mike Josecki, Miami Dolphins. And my number 10, rounding out the top of my tight ends for fantasy production for 2020, Noah Fant, Denver Broncos. Fant has tremendous upside as a pass catcher. The biggest issue he faced over the last 2 seasons was the struggles of the quarterback position in Denver. Yeah, he drops some passes as well that needs to get cleaned up. 5+ catchable drops each season. But hopefully, between Teddy Two Gloves and an improved Drew Lock, whoever ends up actually being the guy in Denver can throw Fant some catchable balls. Noah Fant, number 10, potentially way better, Denver Broncos. That rounds out my top 10 tight ends for fantasy projections for 2021. Oh, we have a little bit more. My 11 through 15 of each position. Now, this is in no particular order. This is just who I think are the next group of 5. For quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield, Big Ben, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, and Joe Burrow. Again, no order to this. These are who I think are going to be in that 11 to 15 range at the quarterback. This is, again, just fantasy football perspective, just from fantasy points. Baker Mayfield, Ben Roethlisberger, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, and Joe Burrow. At running back, 11 through 15, no particular order, Nick Chubb, Mike Davis, James Robinson, Saquon Barkley, and Chris Carson. Why do I have Saquon down at 11 to 15? Well, quite frankly, he's coming off of an ACL injury, and I don't know how well he's going to play, and I don't know how well he's going to come back from this injury. They don't even know if he's going to start week 1, so let's not do that. Why is James Robinson where he is when he was like 5th or 6th last year? No, 7th in running back fantasy points last year? Well, quite frankly, I don't like Urban Meyer. I don't believe in Urban Meyer, and I think the Jags' offensive line is trash. And I don't think James Robinson is going to see the same success that he had, and it's going to be tough. Chris Carson, why is he down in 11 to 15 when he is actually a better running back than that? Well, it's because of his health issues. I don't believe that he's going to play a full 17-game slate. He just hasn't shown that he's capable of being a bell cow running back to be able to handle a full slate. Nick Chubb, same thing. Nick Chubb is a fantastic running back. He's a game changer, but yet he misses 4 games. Mike Davis is a surprise on this list. He came in and shocked the world last year in replacing Christian McCaffrey. Mike Davis gets his shot in Atlanta. I'm excited for Mike Davis. I think Mike Davis could actually blow these projections out of the water. At the wide receiver position, 11 through 15, in no particular order, Mike Evans, Robert Woods, Tyler Lockett, Chase Claypool, and Robbie Anderson. Mike Evans could fall out of fantasy relevance completely. There's such a loaded offense. Robert Woods, he could potentially blow away even an 11 ranking with Matthew Stafford throwing him the ball. Tyler Lockett, depending on how the offense goes for Seattle, Tyler could end up with 1,000+ yards. He could end up with 700 yards. He could end up with 125 receptions. He could end up with 75 receptions. It's all about Russell Wilson getting the time to throw the ball and the offense that they put Russell Wilson in. If they let Russell Wilson cook, let Russ cook, Lockett's going to have a fantastic year. Chase Claypool, I think he's going to have a big second year. He's going to take another leap similar to CeeDee Lamb, not quite as good as CeeDee Lamb, but I think Chase Claypool is going to have a very good year, and if they put Chase Claypool in the wide receiver 1 position, he's going to thrive. Robbie Anderson is going to play with it, probably the best quarterback play that he's had since who knows when. Sam Darnold is going to be good. I think Sam Darnold is going to be very good playing for Matt Rule. Simple as that. Tight ends. Interchangeable guys even more. Mark Andrews, Jonnu Smith / Hunter Henry, because I can't separate the two. Eric Ebron, Evan Ingram, Dallas Goedert. And yes, Dave, I think Pat Freiermuth is going to shock the world. I think Pat Freiermuth is fantastic, but I don't think that Pittsburgh is going to play Pat Freiermuth enough for him to do it in his rookie season. I think Pat Freiermuth, based on what I saw in the preseason, kid's a stud. But Eric Ebron is going to get the start. He's going to get more reps. He's going to get more time on the field. And I think they're going to very slowly bring Freiermuth in and be a Heath Miller type of fix for the Steelers over the next few years. It won't be this year. That's just what I'm gathering based on how the Steelers operate. But more guys that are interchangeable. I believe that he will be used in the red zone. Absolutely. That's the question, though, is how much are they going to get in the red zone and how bad are they going to screw it up this year? And how much is Najee Harris just going to run the ball in the red zone? So, again, lots of questions with the Matt Canada offense this year, but that's also why I didn't have any Steelers in top 10 in fantasy in any position. I just don't see it. I just don't see it this year. I think they're going to be a good team, but I just don't see it this year. So that was our fantasy football projections for 2021. Compliments of Sports Stuff Hub. All right, I got to get this closed out real quick. Hang on a second. End show. There we go. Oh, like I said, I knew some of that would create some controversy, but hey, it's my rankings, and I try not to just go with the flow. I like to base it off of trends and where things are going. And again, being in a top 10, I don't care if you're number 5 or number 8. Being in the top 10 is a good thing. Okay, I gotta get this cord moved. Alright, so we need to get to our box rip tonight, though, guys, because we are struggling. It's 8 o'clock, and I gotta get this done. Come on, where's my mouse? There it is. Oh, I gotta switch my cameras around as well. Hang on. Dang it. There we go. Okay, guys, we are going to rip 2020 Mosaic football just because football season is about to start, and it's really the only football product I have right now. We're going to rip a blaster of Mosaic football. Let's get to it because we have to get going because it is almost 8 o'clock. It is 8 o'clock, and we're going a little overtime tonight. So 2020 Mosaic Football Retail Blaster. I'm sure you guys all remember what Mosaic looked like, and obviously we're chasing Genesis parallels, silvers, autographs always, you know, stuff like that. So here are the base cards. As I said, everybody remembers those. James Conner, Jason Taylor, MVP of Peyton Manning. Got game insert of Nick Chubb, the Chubbster. I gotta move that, that's in my way. Man, these things don't want to open properly. Melvin Gordon III, Kenny G, Tre'Davious White. We have a green of Devin Duvernay for the Ravens. And an expired Kid Reporter. Michael Thomas, Chris Conley, Cole Kmet rookie. And we get an old school Mosaic parallel of Julius Peppers. Marshawn Beast Mode Lynch, Amari Cooper, Michael Vick. Green parallel of Hall of Famer Warren Sapp. Terry Bradshaw, Kirk Cousins, Jerry Jeudy debut rookie for the Broncos. Touchdown Masters, Tony G, Tony Gonzalez for the Chiefs. The Chiefs. Mike Williams, Herman Moore, DJ Moore, and a green Mike Vick for the Falcons, the Falcones. Maybe we'll get lucky and hit a auto in this. Big Justin Herbert auto or something. Terry McLaurin, Sam Darnold, J.K. Dobbins, base rookie, and a silver debut of Justin Jefferson. There we go. Silver debut, Justin Jefferson. And last pack for the blaster. Devin McCourty, Troy Aikman, Ed Reed, and a green debut of Jalen Reagor for the Eagles. So we get a green rookie and a silver rookie of the debuts. So we'll give those two away. I think we got a Komet too, didn't we? Oh, that was Duvernay. We'll give that away too. So we're gonna give away the Justin Jefferson as one, and then we'll give away the Duvernay and the Reagor greens as a pair. Okay, I'm starting to lose my voice. Let's get our randomizer up. We're going to do the dice roll first so that I can get right to it. 7. So remember, guys, we're going to roll the list, or we're going to randomize the list 7 times. Alright, if you would like to be entered into winning either of the giveaways for the Justin Jefferson debut silver or the pair of green rookies, just type me in the chat. M-E, me, in the chat. Alright, we got Taylor. We got Dave Fitch. We got David Miller. We got Shane. I'm only going to give it about a minute or two because, like I said, we're already running overtime tonight. Taylor, Fitch, Miller, and Shane. Looks like all we got tonight. Alright, we're going to roll with it. Alright, so spot number 1 is going to win the Justin Jefferson. Spot number 2 is going to win the green rookie duo. We're going to randomize the list 7 times according to the dice roll. Ready? Good luck, everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and final 7. Fitch. Dave Fitch wins the Justin Jefferson, and Shane wins the green duo. Congratulations, guys. All right, congratulations to our winners tonight. And just a reminder, tomorrow is break night. We have a lineup tomorrow night. We have Immaculate Baseball. We have Certified Football in a PYT, the Immaculate Baseball's random division. We have our Loyalty Rewards break for August, which is a free Topps Chrome break for all entries, for all qualifiers. So if you got qualified, I emailed you already. And you're in for free. There's nothing further you need to do. We're going to lead tomorrow night with that break. That's a free break. We have 30 spots loaded on it. It worked out perfectly. Well, 2 people also said they didn't care to be in the break anyway, so it works. And then we also have a huge basketball mixer. We have Prism basketball for this year, Team All Edition, so the Asia exclusive, and that is going to be big. It's a 2-box mixer along with a box of absolute memorabilia basketball. That's a random team break. So I think it's 45 for that one, and that one, like I said, that break is going to be big. That has huge potential. If we hit a big rookie out of that, that's so massive. I don't think you guys quite realize the team alls are numbered. So like they have the exclusives at 8 and 88 and all that kind of stuff. They're massive. So it's big. So get your spots for tomorrow night's breaks. We're going to be going live right at 4 o'clock Pacific time, and we're going to get right to it. Also tomorrow night, which I forgot to mention this on social media throughout the week, I'm also going to be doing a Funko Pop Sale. If you have friends or family that are into collecting Funko Pops, get them onto the live stream tomorrow night. I'm going to be doing Funko Pop Sales tomorrow for if anybody wants to buy 1 or 100, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to have a lot of Funko Pops that we're going to be running tomorrow night on the show, or on the break night as well. So get your friends, get your family in, and have them tune in. They can buy some Funko Pops while we're live streaming. All right. We're going to call it a night. It's 10 after 8 already. Went a little bit later than we were supposed to tonight. But it was a fun show tonight. I'm glad you guys tuned in. Thank you very much. And I will be back tomorrow night for break night. And I'll be back next Tuesday for Sports Stuff Hub Live episode 48. Appreciate you guys being here. Again, Ryan with Sports Stuff Hub. And have a good night, everybody. We'll talk to you later.